It's interesting to watch an earthquake. I know that you usually think of just feeling an earthquake, but actually you can see sort of the earth as it sort of, a wave sort of comes and just ripples along, and you can actually see. I was, this maybe a year or so ago, I was up here in Santa Ana, and I felt this, I heard this sort of rumble, and I saw the wave, and it went past, and the whole thing began to shake. And I mean, that gives you sort of a weird feeling because you're so helpless. What can you do when the earth is shaking like that? But imagine, now these are just local. These are, just local faults. In fact, here in California, whenever we get an earthquake, the question is, whose fault is it? Because we have so many faults here in Southern California that, you just wonder which earthquake fault, where the tectonic plates, shifted a bit and gave you a little bit of a shake. But can you imagine the whole world shaking? God says he's going to shake the heavens and the earth. Suddenly you realize how weak and helpless we are when nature goes on a rampage. So helpless to stop it. And so these kinds of judgments are coming, and it does appear that before the Lord returns, there will be another tremendous shaking. It talks about every island fleeing away. Now, I have said, sort of tongue-in-cheek, that I want the island of Hawaii when we come back. I'd like to have that be my realm of ruling. I've got my reservation in. But with every island, disappearing, I might be ruling at the bottom of the sea. So Neptune. So I've sort of told the Lord, well, no, wherever, But the changes that are going to take place. We know that our earth is presently tilted on its axis at a 23 1/3 degree tilt, so that we are not in a straight perpendicular axis from the sun, but we're at a tilted axis, which gives us our summer and winter as we go in our revolution around the sun, that we get the longer days in the summer and the shorter days in the winter, and we understand how this 23 1/3 degree affects the weather and affects our monthly, conditions. Evidently, maybe at the flood, and probably at the flood, God just shook the earth tremendously. The oceans left, and with the weight of the water, caused the upthrust of the Himalayas, and hence the little fossils, shell fossils up there. But this whole thing, the Lord, it would seem, is going to shake it again. And it will be interesting because obviously the climates of the world will be vastly changed. We know that they were different during the time of Noah and prior to the flood. That in the time of Adam, it was much different. It was a mild climate. And there weren't any strong winds, hurricanes, tornadoes, things of that nature. Because if you had a mild climate all the way around the earth, and water suspended in the atmosphere, which evidently it was before the time of the flood, time of Noah, where the water that was above or suspended in the atmosphere was much greater than it is today. No rain, just the water, the earth being watered at night by this mist. That it would not, with our winds and all, are caused by hot and cold air. As the hot air rises and the cold air comes pushing in, it creates the winds and all that we have here on the earth. But if you had sort of an equal climate around the whole earth, you wouldn't have then the strong winds. And so it will be interesting when we come back to see the weather patterns and to see the difference that will be here on the earth, whereas probably no more deserts, probably the whole earth will be habitable, and it will be interesting indeed to behold. So, there were voices, thunders, lightnings, and a great earthquake, such as was not since men were upon the earth, so mighty an earthquake and so great. And the great city was divided into 3 parts, and the cities of the nations fell. Can you imagine the devastation, say in Los Angeles, or those high rises and so forth, in a great earthquake like this? The great Babylon came into remembrance before God to give her the cup of the wine of the fierceness of his wrath. Next week, as we get into chapter 17, we're going to see the judgment upon Babylon, and that is the religious Babylon, and we'll be sharing with you quite a bit about that next Sunday night. Every island, it says, fled away, and the mountains were not found, which means again that there will be this geographical change of the earth in this 7th vial or bowl of God's wrath. And there fell upon men a great hail out of heaven, every stone about the weight of a talent, or 90 pounds. And men blasphemed God because of the plague of hail, for the plague thereof was exceeding great. I was addressing a group of fellows at a Army base up in Colorado Springs, and these guys were in an armored division, and they had asked me to talk to these fellows, which I had the privilege of doing. And as I was talking to them, suddenly it began to hail, the size of marbles, huge, some of them almost as large as golf balls. My speech ended in a hurry as all of us headed for the armored vehicles and dove in to escape the hail that was falling. And it could really knock you out. It was really fierce. And while we were in this tank, you could hear it pelting on the top of the tank. The cars that were parked around all ended up with big dimples on the hoods and all because of hail, and that was only the size of large marbles. Can you imagine a hailstorm with the hailstones weighing about 90 pounds? they would come right through your roof.